How about Leone?
No. He became the first governor. He became the first prime minister. The first governor general when they became independent was an Igbo fellow. Azikiwe. No. Namde Azikiwe. So he was the one who, when he went back and was a journalist, did journalism. He started in Nigeria. No, he didn't start in his own country. He started in Ghana. He had a little newspaper in Ghana. Then he came to Liberia and started a newspaper like that. But everywhere he went, the top people were suspicious. How come this American fellow is coming to do this thing? But being a journalist and the first African journalist, that was serious because Freetown had its weekly news, etc., etc. But they were never talking anything political. But he started this political idea. It was through him that people like Kwame Nkrumah came to study in this country, because he himself had already been in this country and studied. So that was the connection with Kwame Nkrumah. So then, when after I went to Canada, he told the Organization of African Students that he wanted to study law, because he understood now that unless you know law, you're not going to succeed in this aim that we had about independence. So he said goodbye to us and went to England. Unfortunately for him, he could not pass any law exams in England. With all his MA from Columbia, etc., he could not pass there. Then Dankwa, who was the head of the political movement in Ghana, heard about him languishing in London, not getting a degree. So they wrote him and said, "We heard that you're a brilliant person, you've got a degree from the United States. We need somebody like you to come and be secretary of this organization that we have in Ghana. We think you can help us a lot." So he gave up, since he was not succeeding in London, came there and assumed the position. The first thing he organized was a strike, a national strike, and there he was grabbed and put in jail. And it was out of jail that he came and became the first. So that was our contact with him. But let me continue our contact with as they go, because they are very short. We remained friends, of course, naturally, and he was glad of independence. He sent people to celebrate our independence, etc. Then he decided to come and visit Liberia at the time when I was there as the WHO, when I was still the head of African section of WHO from Brazzaville. I was stationed in Liberia, and I got very chummy with the president, etc. when Kwame came to visit. And as a part of his visit, he told President Topman, Karefa-Smart, who's now WHO head here, he and I know each other from there. I'd like to spend one evening with him, although he was a guest of government. So the president said, yes, you can. So he came, and Rina and I hosted him. Halfway through, he said, Karefa, let's go upstairs to the top of the house. It was a house we rented from Mrs. King, the late President King. He said, I'm thinking of going beyond what we are now. I'm thinking of being really independent. What shall I do? I said, brother, you're ahead of us. You got independent before we got. I cannot advise you. He said, but you can think about it. Is it a good thing or bad thing? I said, my gut feeling is, go ahead. If you go ahead and lead like you led us in the other thing. He said, okay, I'll do so. So that was my contact with Kwame Nkrumah. But later on, you know what I found out? When we went to the actual meeting of the OAU, because he had joined the northern people and said, the French, and said, you don't join these people, they are radical. You will not get good support from the rest of Europe. And so they broke us up. They formed what they call the Casablanca group. And we, who were in this lower part, they formed the Monrovia group. And the leaders of that were Rudolph Grimes, who was the foreign minister of Liberia, myself, the foreign minister of Sierra Leone, and a fellow from Senegal, who was the foreign minister of Sierra Leone, who were the head of the Monrovia group. But it was our responsibility then, since we had the vision with the Casablanca group did not yet accept, of forming this united organization, OAU, Organization of African Unity. So they gave us the responsibility of writing the constitution. I was not a lawyer, but Rudolph Grimes, who was also a fellow Harvard, he was a graduate of the Harvard Law School, which, as you know, is well reputed, and my fellow from Senegal, he was there because it was French. Grimes actually was the constructor, he was the because of his law degree, he wrote all the things, but we three had to agree. And so that's how the constitution of the OAU came about. But finally we succeeded in getting even the Monrovia group, including Ghana, to see that we were ahead of them a little, because the French could not influence Kwame Nkrumah the way they thought they could influence him, because of his independent nature, as I told you. And he saw that belonging to them when the rest of us were forming this other group, which was larger, was not very wise. So he persuaded all of them to come to the OAU. That's how the Casablanca group got broken up, and we all agreed to go to Addis Ababa. Fortunately for us, the emperor saw the wisdom of this, and out of his own money, he built Africa House. Have you been there?
Yes.
You should see it. Quite a house. He built it and gave it to us. He said, this can be your headquarters and your home. And that's how we all went there for the first meeting of the OAU. Something that started because of the initiative of some of us from West Africa.
What was Tubman like?
Tubman was again another very interesting person. Half American, half I mean, he was purely American in the sense that his ancestry was all people who had been slaves over here. So he introduced the Virginia reel and that kind of dance, etc. But he also saw a little in the future. He saw that after all, there were only a small little group which had formed this little coastal group of American rebellion. But the rest of the country was, so he made friends with all the tribal people up in the north. He started occasionally wearing a big gown, but the rest of the uniform was always Western dress, and in his dances it was always Western dress. When Rina and I were invited there, we had to wear formal dress. In fact, we still have a picture of the, and he gave me the first thing he did was give me 2 Nigerian decorations. Order of the Star of Africa. Something out of African redemption, because he was so friendly. He was a very, very nice person. But he did not go far enough. His colleague who went far enough was the one who was murdered, Talbot, when Talbot took his place. Because Talbot had half African parents and half American Liberian, and that's how he started going that way. But there again, unfortunately, I have to say so, the British and the Americans did not like this change which took place when Talbot succeeded Tubman. In the first place, Talbot began to make friends with Libya, because he saw that that was a place where he could supplement his income, etc. And he formed this Libya Association. Libya came and built one of the few skyscrapers in Monrovia, and so they call it Libya House, and they did not like it. And I think it was British and American influence that inspired Samuel Doe, to take the coup d'etat, which was not just a coup d'etat. They actually went to his bedroom and killed him. Talbot. That's how it happened.
Did you get to know Sékou Touré?
Very well, more than very well. When we were getting along already, Sékou Touré was still a trade union leader in Guinea, and we got to know him as friends. Good. Then when the big change came, when he said no to de Gaulle, he sent a mission to Sir Milton and said, look, we said no, we are going to follow your way, we are going to be independent too, so we'd like to be friends. So Sir Milton would send me over there to visit, and then later on Sir Milton and I went to call on him officially. He took us to see his aluminum mining up in the north. He treated us royally, really. So he became a real friend. But he recognized what Sir Milton and I had, which he did not have. He did not have any academic education, uniform. Although as a speaker, he would get to speak, he would speak for hours, and then they would publish all his works. But he had only secondary school education. But he respected Sir Milton and I. We were real friends of his in that sense.
Now, during that period when you were the External Affairs Minister, who else did you meet? What other African heads of state?
Well, all of those that met at the OAU. I mean, after the OAU was another
who were the ones that you were most impressed by?
Houphouët-Boigny from Guinea. I mean, from Côte d'Ivoire. Leopold Senghor. I liked Leopold Senghor very much. Whenever I went there, I'd call on him. He had a French wife, and he'd invite me to the typical dinner at his place with his French wife. And being an academic person, even from the academic point, much more than me, because he was so literate in the French thing that they appointed him as a member of the French Academy.
Mhm.
He was the first African to be there. But he and I would converse like brothers almost. He was not much older than me, but he was a very good leader and very, very astute. So I not only met him, but also people, and also in the case of Guinea, in addition to Secretary, the person who was his foreign minister at the U, and who used to come to the UN, who he later on killed. You can find those names out there. When I think of recent names like that, usually I have to think before I. And he was the Guinea ambassador at the UN, but he went back home later on, and the secretary found some way of killing him because he thought he was ambitious, too ambitious. So I met him. Now let me see, who else did I meet? Oh, the people in East Africa. This is another big story.
Amamboya, Jomo Kenyatta?
No, the head, the one who was accused of being the head of the...
Mama?
No. It's on the tip of my tongue. I'll tell you how I met him in London. On my way back home, when I was in the Canadian Army uniform, and the British kept me there until they could find a passage for me. One of my former Frobe College colleagues, whose name was this habit of mine. Anyway, he was studying law in London,
Mm-hmm.
and he invited me. I was passing through like the other cell unions, and he was a fellow Frobe College. He invited me to a meeting which they had of people from the Caribbean, and some of the names you would know, and they were forming an African kind of a Pan-African kind of association. But the same thing I found out, they were calling each other comrades because they were all members of the British Communist Party. The first thing I'm thinking about, among the people who were there was, he was head of the Mau Mau. What was his name? Kenyatta. Jomo Kenyatta was there too. Well, Jomo Kenyatta was there, and Kwame Nkrumah was there, and so that was somebody from there. So that when independence came, of course, since I'd met him in London, I was open door to the cabinet of the, and the fellow the person who succeeded him, he was also Kikuyu. No, he was Kikuyu, but the next person was Luo, Tom Mboya, who was killed. All of them were there. I met them. Further down south, the man who was a school teacher, who was head of, was it Malawi?
Nyerere.
No, who married a Ghanaian woman. Did you know his wife?
No, I didn't know.
Yes, his wife was Ghanaian.
No, didn't know that.
And so that organization of African unity brought us all together. So that wherever I went, people regarded me as somebody who was part of them, a brother. We didn't know anybody though from South Africa.
Because of apartheid.
Because of apartheid.
Were there any African heads of state or leaders that you didn't like?
That I did not like?
Yeah.
Well, I don't say that. Since they don't, nothing that I did not like. For instance, what was his name? Who was killed in Togo?
Olympio.
Olympio. I knew both Olympia and his son, who later on was an exile in London. Olympio was another one of these very nice, very well educated. Not only he knew German as well as the Germans did, because it had been a previous German colony, and he was one of our bright leaders because they were ahead of us. I mean, he was head of state, etc. Until again he was killed, as you know.
Yeah.
Let me see who else died. It's so long ago now since I did not have but I was well known by all of them. That's why I tell people today, when I go everywhere, the people still regard me as one of the original leaders of the Organization of African Unity. And I feel very happy and proud about that.
Let me just go back a little bit. What I didn't ask you was,